the retirement ceremony of Lieutenant Colonel J.K. Joyner. This afternoon, we give special recognition to one of the Air Force's finest, Lieutenant Colonel Joyner, who is closing out a distinguished military career. Lieutenant Colonel Joyner's dedication to duty, leadership, and loyalty have been a source of inspiration to all of us, and we are proud to have had the opportunity to serve with him. We hope he and his wife, Patsy, will take fond memories of the United States Air Force with them, and we wish them good health and happiness. Again, thank you for your attendance today, and we hope you enjoy the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the entrance of the official party and remain standing for our national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. I'd like to welcome several special guests. In the audience, we have Brigadier General Cabero, United States Air Force retired, former Dean of Faculty; Brigadier General Waken, United States Air Force retired, former Professor and Head of Department of Philosophy and Fine Arts; and Brigadier General and Mrs. Johnston, United States Air Force retired, former F-16 Wing Commander at Hill Air Force Base, Utah, and former Air Officer Commanding of Cadet Squadron 40. Seated on stage with the Joyners are Colonel Don Howsam, United States Air Force retired, class of 66, former Group Commander, 750th Space Group, Onizuka Air Base, California, and former USAFA faculty; Mrs. Dougie Young of Sedalia, Colorado; and Major Katrina Murphy, United States Air Force retired, from Oakton, Virginia. Finally, I'd like to introduce Brigadier General Waggy, Dean of Faculty.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's really an honor for me to be here and preside over this retirement, and I'd like to thank Jay and Patsy for the opportunity. It's always wonderful as you go through records and look at what people have accomplished in an Air Force career. It's always very impressive to see how they've dedicated their time and their efforts and done a wide variety of things to support the Air Force, not just in their normal job area, but in lots and lots of other ways. And I'd like to kind of go through some of the highlights of Jay's career and talk about those things. Now, you all have in front of you a program that, as Paul Harvey would say, you've seen the bio, now it's time for the rest of the story. And I have to be careful, if I step on the food, Patsy will never forgive this. Patsy also told me to tell you that if I miss something, she's going to cover it her remarks. So. Okay. Well, as the bio says, Jay was born in Wiesbaden, and he went to high school in Illinois, and then he came to the Air Force Academy. And of course, his bio says he graduated in 1977, and then went on to pilot training, etc. I thought it was useful, since he was a member of the faculty, to go back and look at his transcript. You can all, what's this? I hear from him. Jay, I'm sure he didn't mind. I didn't ask his permission. But anyway, Jay did a great job while he was here. As a cadet, he had a 3.4 GPA. He was on the Dean's list all 8 semesters, did a great job. He was on the Comms and Soups list some semesters. But in addition to that, I looked closely, and Jay was basically an A and B student in almost everything. The only thing he struggled with were some courses like law, poli-sci, history, English, psychology. So I guess even then, Jay knew he was kind of a techno geek, right? Okay. But he did a great job here at the Academy, graduated in the top 15% of his class, did a great job. received an instructor letter that said, we'd like you to come back here and teach. So after that, Jay went, as your bio says, to pilot training, but not so fast. Actually, what he did was, after a month of leave, he went to headquarters MAC at Scott Air Force Base, where he worked for 2 months doing some software design and implementation. Now, that's not a long period of time, but I have a quote here that I think you'll find very impressive. This is from a training report after being there just 2 months. Lieutenant Joyner accomplished more in his 2-month stay at headquarters MAC than we had expected could be done in 6. He's in the top 2% of lieutenants I have observed. Using his academy background in computer science, he was able to solve many problems for us, several of which the computer manufacturer had been unable to solve. I thought that was a pretty good comment. So not only did Jay make a good impression on behalf of the computer science department, but on behalf of the academy. That was a big job. So he was there 2 months, and then he went to Vance Air Force Base to pilot training. He ended up #1 in his flight. A lot of people don't know how big a flight is, and it depends on the base you go to. At Vance, in his flight, he had 41 pilots he competed against, and he ended up #1 out of 41 pilots in pilot training. And so he selected an F-15, which is going to go on to fighters. As you notice from your bio, it takes a long time, even after pilot training, to train into a special weapon system like the F-15. So it took about 9 months for him to go through fighter lead-in training and F-15 training and water survival. That was at Homestead at the time, right? So it was down on the beach. Yeah, that was a tough assignment. But 9 months en route to his first assignment at Edmond, where he was an F-15 pilot. And Jay had already started showing the fact that he was going to be one of the top people in the squadron. As a lieutenant, he was selected by the squadron to compete in the wing Top Gun competition. And it turned out he was the only lieutenant in the entire wing that was selected to do that. So as a lieutenant, he was as good a pilot or better than an awful lot of the captains and majors in the unit. He was also the youngest flight lead they had at Eglin. He was a range control officer, a range training officer, a scheduler, did a tremendous amount there. And then he found a second niche in the Air Force. He was a life support section commander. Now, life support, especially in fighters, is very important. Those are the folks that talk to you about your survival kit, your parachute, your extraction system, everything else. So he ran the life support section for his squadron. And he was named in 1981, his squadron section was named as the best section in TAC. So in the entire Tactical Air Command, his life support section was named #1. So he certainly did a great job there. And that was from 1979 to 1982. And in fact, his boss said, Jay ranks in the top 5% of his peers. Now that all sounds like it was really important stuff, but the most important thing that happened during that tour was Jay met Patsy, and in January of 1982, they got married in Fort Walton Beach. So that was the start of an additional member of the Air Force family and team, and certainly they both contributed ever since. So in 1982 then, they moved from Eglin to Luke Air Force Base. And now Jay is becoming a more seasoned pilot. So he does the things you would normally expect of a pilot. He's an instructor pilot. He's a runway supervisory officer where he is out there on the runway watching 200 sorties a day and making sure those are safe. But in addition to that, he becomes an assistant wing scheduler. What does that mean? Well, there were 5 squadrons at Luke. There was a squadron of F-5s and 4 squadrons of F-15s. So as a scheduler, he was in charge of 105 aircraft, about 120 pilots, and scheduled about 30,000 sorties a year. So a really big job. And those sorties in fighters, there are a lot of distinct different sorties. He had to schedule sorties in air refueling, in air gunnery, and in air combat maneuvers as well. So there were a lot of things that he had to schedule during that time as assistant scheduler. So those are the flying sorts of things he did, but they couldn't forget the fact that he had been a life support officer. In fact, he'd been the best life support officer in TAC. So they made him again the section life support officer there. And at the end of the year, he was the TAC IG came in for inspection and said that his life support section was the best he had ever seen. So the reward for doing good work is more good work, right? So he ended up being selected then to be the wing life support officer. And that meant that he was in charge of all 5 squadrons at Luke, 105 aircraft, the same ones he scheduled previously. 105 aircraft, 9 helicopters, 120 pilots, $2 million worth of equipment. And he was responsible for the entire life support training of all the fighter aircraft at Luke Air Force Base. A huge job, and a very good job. Now that sounds like it's more than enough job for one person, but he has this comp sci background. So he also was the wing computer officer. And so this is back in the 80s. He had 8 systems worth about $60,000, and he was in charge of making sure and organize the wing computer systems. That was a busy few years for him, but in addition, he found time to go to Squadron Officer School, where he graduated in the top 15% of his class in leadership. So the time that Luke was very busy. He ended up doing flying things, he ended up doing life support things, he ended up doing computer things, and he went to SOS besides. So in 1985, after his time at Luke, he got selected by the Air Force Academy to go for a master's degree. So Jay and Patsy went to Georgia Tech, where he got a master's degree in 18 months in computer science, and then he came here to the Air Force Academy for his first tour between 1987 and 1991. While he was here, he did the normal instructor things. He was a classroom instructor, he was an advisor, he worked on cadet accountability system, he was the safety officer and the bond officer and all these other things that aren't real important in the scheme of things. But he did some other very important things. He was in charge of the Computer Science Advanced Computer Lab. Now that was 9 systems, serving about 1,600 cadets in 22 courses, and about $1 million worth of equipment. A lot of good work that went into the Comp-Sci major and supporting a lot of other courses besides. In addition to that, in addition to being in charge of the Computer Science Lab, he was also the Air Force Academy, visiting scientist from the Air Force Academy to a DoD software engineering committee, where he worked on Ada and using the Ada programming language in Air Force mission systems. He became an Ada expert and actually developed and implemented training across the Air Force for Ada, ended up training folks at headquarters, TAC, and 7 other Air Force locations, where he trained them in the use of Ada, which was the new programming language that the Air Force was going to have. So during that time, he was very busy, spent 4 years here at the Academy, did a wonderful job in a variety of ways, and because of that, he was sponsored then for a doctorate. So Jay and Patsy then went to the University of Minnesota, where he got his doctorate in 3 years. Now, when people spend 3 years working on a doctorate, I think we really owe it to everybody when they retire to kind of mention a title or two of an article or something they did. So I really have to do that. So his dissertation was named Data Centered Program Understanding. That doesn't sound too bad. But one of the papers he wrote, you're all laughing ahead of time here. One of the papers he wrote was called Program Slicing, Ripple Effect Analysis, and Dependence Analysis. Now, I've been to Big Ten schools, and normally the effective ripple is something they see on Saturday mornings, but I'm not sure that's what they really meant in the Comp-Sci system there. But he not only did his dissertation while he was there, he was the athlete liaison officer. And for those who have gone through the system, you know that means that he was the officer in charge of all other Air Force officers going through education at the University of Minnesota. So he had to look after them. And he taught an ROTC class on Introduction to Flight. So he was teaching ROTC, working the rest of the AFIT students, and finishing his dissertation in 3 years. A tremendous accomplishment. I did want to make one other comment on this. I got a couple quotes here from his OPRs, and I want to make sure to capture those. When he left the Air Force Academy, where he also, by the way, was a TG-7 IP. That's the one thing I forgot, besides doing the lab work and everything else. One of his OPRs, he said, he taught computer novices, advanced computer science majors, engineering students, and airmanship students with the same outstanding results. So he certainly has been an educator and has been an expert in flight, in computer science, and in all the other things I mentioned. So then, after finishing his doctorate at the University of Minnesota, Jay came back here for a second tour. So he was back here now between 1994 and 1998. And Jay really had a chance to kind of put the capstone leadership in place. He was the deputy department head in the Department of Computer Science, responsible when the boss was gone for all 26 courses, the entire department, about 1,000 cadets a year that went through the courses. He also was on a number of committees, as all the senior faculty in here understand, as our obligations. He was on the Prep School Superintendent's Evaluation Committee, looking over the prep school programs, helping them prepare to come here in computer science and other areas. He also was the Academy representative to another DoD Engineering Software Education Committee, where he represented us. And I think the crowning achievement of the 4 years there, in charge of curriculum, in charge of the department, in charge of the courses, etc., was the fact that the computer science students in nationally normed tests ended up in the top 5% of the nation. And I think that's really a tribute to the leadership and expertise that Jay provided to the Department of Computer Science. So now Jay's been here for a second tour for 4 years, and the Air Force calls him and says, we need an F-15 pilot who's smart with computers to go to Korea. And Jay's a dedicated Air Force officer who said, I'll do that. So Jay went on a remote, and this is part of the sacrifice Air Force officers made, but so did their spouses. So Patsy stayed here for the year, and Jay went to Osan, Korea, where he was the director of Theater Battle Staff Information Systems. And that was a really important job for 2 reasons. One is he provided to the Joint Force Air Component Commander software systems to help them do their battle plans, to implement them, and do battle damage assessment afterwards. He also worked on a computer system that was called a Common Operational Picture, where on a computer screen he could provide to the commanders a map of the theater, and overlaid with that was all the tracks of the Air Force aircraft, Army units, Navy units, and overlaid with that was the weather, and overlaid with that was the theater missile defense. So a commander could see on a single computer screen in near real time how the war, how the battle, how the exercise was going. Very important. So those are the two main things he worked on, but then, oh, by the way, he was the Y2K planner and assessor for all the PACAF. So they said, okay, Jay, before any of this stuff that you've developed, all the things we use for battle planning, battle assessment, and computerized systems goes screw-wire. We want you to look across PACAF and make sure that we have a plan and we have an assessment program in place so that Y2K will not destroy our systems here. So Jay really had an important job making sure that we were ready for Y2K across all the PACAF. Did a great job there, and then just returned here about a month ago and got ready for retirement. So I just want to say to Jay and Patsy both, it's been a great career. You have contributed a great deal to the Air Force. Jay has certainly been a fighter pilot in terms of being an instructor and doing all those things. He's been a great computer science instructor here and used his computer expertise both at his flying organizations and over in Korea. He's shown great leadership in all the locations he's been and certainly risen head and shoulders above his peers in every place he's been. So Jay, you and Patsy have dedicated your lives to the Air Force Academy in our country. You've done a great job, and now we're going to celebrate your transition to the next and hopefully more relaxed phase of your life. So Jay, if you'd like to join me, we'll get on with the more official part of this. Celebrate your transition to the next and hopefully more relaxed phase of your life. So Jay, if you'd like to join me, we'll get on with the more official part of this.
Please stand for the presentation of the declaration, followed by the retirement order and certificate. Attention to orders. Citation to accompany the award of the Meritorious Service Medal, the 2nd Oakley Cluster, to J.K. Joyner. Lieutenant Colonel J.K. Joyner distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Director of Systems Management, 607th Air Support Operations Group, 7th Air Force, Osan Air Base, Republic of Korea, from 18 September 1998 to 14 August 1999. During this period, Colonel Joyner brilliantly led a multidisciplinary team of military and civilian contractors in the development, initial fielding, and operational testing of the Theater Battle Management Core System in the Korean Theater of Operations. With over 240 computer workstations located at more than 40 sites on and off Peninsula, including several aboard naval vessels, the command and control network operated by 7th Air Force is the largest and most complex in the entire world and serves users from all branches of the United States military as well as the armed forces of the Republic of Korea. Colonel Joyner led a very successful effort focused on identifying and solving dozens of complex technical challenges, ensuring interoperability between numerous legacy computer systems requiring upgrades. Colonel Joyner also led a multi-service and multinational team of operators and technicians in the use, training, and administration of the largest contingency theater automated planning system network in the world. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Colonel Joyner culminate a long and distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. Retirement order. In accordance with the Department of the Air Force Special Order Number AC-011155, dated 12 June 1998, announcement is made of the retirement of Lieutenant Colonel J.K. Joyner, United States Air Force, effective 1 October 1999 by order of the Secretary of the Air Force. Certificate of Retirement. From the Armed Forces of the United States of America. To all who shall see these presents, greetings. This is to certify that Lieutenant Colonel J.K. Joyner, having served faithfully and honorably, was retired from the United States Air Force on the first day of October, 1999, signed by General Michael E. Ryan, Chief of Staff, United States Air Force, and by Lieutenant General Joseph E. Hurd, Commander, 7th Air Force. Certificate of Appreciation. For service in the Armed Forces of the United States, Lieutenant Colonel J.K. Joyner, I extend to you my personal thanks and sincere appreciation of our nation for your honorable service. You helped to maintain the security of the United States of America with a devotion to duty that is in keeping with the proud tradition of our armed forces. I honor your service and respect the commitment and loyalty you displayed over the years. My best wishes to you for happiness and success in the future. Signed, Bill Clinton, Commander-in-Chief. Mrs. Joyner, will you please come forward?
I'd like to ask for a hand.
In the early 1970s, the Air Force Chief of Staff, having recognized the enormous contributions of spouses to the success of their spouse's career, initiated a certificate of appreciation that publicly acknowledges their support. The certificate reads, "In grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents this certificate of recognition to Patricia C. Joyner for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service. Given this first day of October 1999. It is signed by General Michael E. Ryan, Chief of Staff, United States Air Force, and by Lieutenant General Joseph E. Hurd, Commander, 7th Air Force." Mrs. Joyner, will you please come forward?
This very short conversation came across an email I received from a very dear friend from Las Vegas. The story just really moved me, and it made me very proud of my husband's military career. I just wanted to share it with you. It's called A Real Job. You know, some people really just don't understand why military personnel do what they do for a living. Well, this exchange between Senators John Glenn and Howard Metzenbaum, to me, was worth reading. Not only is it a pretty impressive impromptu speech, but it also is a good example of one man's explanation of why men and women in the uniformed services do what they do for a living. And it's an example of what those who have never served think of the military. Senator Metzenbaum to Senator Glenn. How can you run for Senate when you've never held a real job? Senator Glenn responds, well, I served 23 years in the United States Marine Corps. I served through 2 wars. I flew 149 missions. My plane was hit by anti-aircraft fire on 12 different occasions. I was in the space program. It wasn't my checkbook. It was my life on the line. It was not a 9-to-5 job where I took off time to take the daily cash receipts into the bank. I ask you to go with me, as I went the other day to a veterans hospital, and look at those men with their mangled bodies in the eye, and you tell them they didn't hold a job. You go with me to the space program, and you go as I have gone to the widows and the orphans of Ed White and Gus Grissom and Roger Chafee, and you look those kids in the eye and you tell them that their dad didn't hold a job. You go with me on Memorial Day and you stand in Arlington National Cemetery, where I have more friends than I'd like to remember, and you watch those waving flags, and you stand there, and you think about this nation, and you tell me that those people didn't have a job. I'll tell you, Howard Metzenbaum, You should be on your knees every day of your life thanking God that there were some men who held a job. And they required a dedication to purpose and a love of country and a dedication to duty that was more important than life itself. And their self-sacrifice is what made this country possible. I have held a job, Howard. What about you? Just made me feel real good, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before hearing Lieutenant Colonel Joyner's remarks, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Hobart, Head, Department of Computer Science, to make a special presentation.
Jay, we'd like to present a shower box and a flag to you as a sincere and heartfelt thank you from the department for your service to us. All of us who were here at the time when you were Colonel Bear's deputy head greatly appreciate your leadership, and I can truly say, as I'm sure all of us can, that it was truly a pleasure to work for you. As curriculum chair, you were in large part responsible for crafting and implementing the curriculum that we have now. Your quiet and yet firm leadership was very effective in helping us to reach some consensus over some rather difficult issues. And your experience and your insight have greatly improved our computer science major. You've been a great role model for all of us, highly efficient in everything that you do, highly effective in the classroom, rave reviews from your students and end-of-course critiques, and always eager to try new teaching techniques. You led the way in increasing the use of computers in the classroom to teach programming concepts. You restructured our intro courses for our comp sci majors. I think that went a long way towards increasing the popularity of the computer science major. Those you directly supervise learn just how great an ability you have to motivate and to inspire others. Anytime that one of your subordinates had a problem, you had the time and the insight to work out a solution. Personally, I greatly value the friendship that we've developed over the past 4 years. And I know all of us wish you the very best as you start a new chapter in your life. Hello, the White House, and then we'll get your first count.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel Joyner.
You know, the other day, when we were rehearsing for the ceremony, General Lackey offered me one of those mobile microphones like he wears. I said, no way, I've got to have something steady to hold on to up here. Steady me and keep you from seeing how bad my knees are going to be shaking up here after a little while. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to attend this celebration today. I'm really overwhelmed by the size of the audience out there. Makes me wonder what Patsy promised all of you in the invitation. Sit down there, but she's done a great job, as you can see. You know, I spent a lot of sleepless nights over in Korea last year. What kept me awake even more than the threat of a North Korean Scud missile just a 2.5-minute flight away, or the thought of a North Korean commando jumping out from behind a tree to slit my throat, was the thought of standing here today in front of all of you and having to stay composed hopefully say something profound and meaningful. I think if it had been left up to me, I would have simply preferred to fade away like other old soldiers. But today is about much more than just me. It is about honoring the long tradition of military service and all of the people and events that have gotten us here today. Besides, if John Elway can stand up in front of national cameras and turn into a blubbering idiot, I guess I can too. Though I have to say I admire the way Barry Sanders did it. He leaves the country and issues a press release for his retirement. But of course, Patsy would have none of that. I would like to thank General Waggy and the efforts of his staff for preparing those wonderful remarks and officiating the ceremony today. It's hard, I can't believe all the things he came up with out of those, out of that military record. Some of that stuff I forgot. This is special because the departments of astronautics, where General Waggy started, on faculty duty, and computer science have a long history together. I appreciate that you would take the time to honor me today, sir. I want to thank Major Sarazada from the Computer Science Department for volunteering to be the project officer for this ceremony today. It takes a special person to answer an email message and volunteer to plan a retirement for someone who's not even in the department anymore. But Sarah is a special person. She graduated in 1987 with a double major in biology and computer science and was a top graduate from DFCS, earning a blue chip and an instructor letter along the way. DFCS is fortunate to have her back. Thank you, Sarah, for all of you. I also want to thank the front office staff of DFCS, Donna and Sherry. See Sherry over there. In addition to assisting Sarah with the preparations for this ceremony today, they provided a great deal of support to Patsy and me while I was away in Korea last year. It was very important to know that there was always a friendly voice at the other end of the phone to assist in any way that they could. You ladies are the best. We all know that it's the front office staff that keeps the departments running smoothly anyway. How about a nice round of applause for Sarah and Donna and Sherry? I need to also mention Dr. Barry Fagan provided the accompaniment as you were proceeding. I appreciate that, Barry. And I want to thank Bill Hobart for those nice remarks. Lastly, I want to thank you in the audience for taking time out of your busy schedules to share this celebration with Patsy and me. It is the friendship and camaraderie from all of you that help make this an especially meaningful career for both Patsy and myself. I had the opportunity to have a retirement ceremony over in Korea, but I couldn't imagine holding it anywhere else but here. Patsy and I have been a part of the USAFA community since 1987. I'm grateful to have so many of you here today. I can't wait to meet you all after I'm through with my remarks. I might also mention that this stage is kind of special to me. This is the stage that I was sworn in. My cadet squadron used this venue for their swearing in 22 years ago. My dad swore me in right across the way. So that also makes it very important and very special to me. As I look back over my 22-year journey in the Air Force, I have many people to thank along the way. Beginning with my parents, who shaped my value system and got me pointed in the right direction from the very beginning. I believe one of the most important life lessons that they taught me, that I learned early on, was the significance of setting goals and then expecting to work hard to achieve them over time. Too many people today seem to expect rewards to come to them without investing the effort necessary to earn them. The other great life lesson I got from my parents was the value of honesty and integrity. We all know how important that is in a military career. I am most grateful to them. Unfortunately, they are both passed and can't be here today. I'm most grateful to them for giving me the solid foundation on which I've been able to build the rest of my life, including my military career. On active duty, I've been fortunate to be associated with many excellent role models. Colleagues, supervisors, commanders, who inspired me and challenged me to be the best that I could be. I'm very happy that the most influential of these is in the audience here today. Through a chance meeting at the dining room of the Air Force Academy Officers Club in the summer of 1973, When I was here saying goodbye to my family before entering the class of 77, I met Don Housen, wife Chris, and they later became my cadet sponsor family over that chance meeting in the Officers Club dining room. Don was the first Air Force officer other than my father that I had ever gotten to know. By the time I met him in my dually year, Don had already done everything I was dreaming of doing. He had been a cadet, he had graduated from the academy, he had gone to pilot training and flown fighter jets. Though I didn't realize it at the time, I'm sure that Don's assignment on the faculty had planted the seed in me about the opportunity for graduate education and subsequent faculty duty later in my career. It is certainly one of the magical mysteries of life that a simple hello across a dining room table can turn into such a significant lifelong relationship. I'm very glad it turned out that way, and I'm very glad to have them and his wife Chris in the audience today. I've had a magnificent time on active duty. I've been able to travel the world, seeing much of it from the cockpit of an F-15. I've been able to meet and work with hundreds of marvelous people from nearly a dozen different countries. As I look back now, I had the kind of career that my parents fondly talked about at home around the dining room table when we were growing up. I guess it was their stories that have inspired me on my journey. For all its greatness, though, today would not mean a fraction of what it does if I did not have such a wonderful partner to share it all with. My wife, Patsy, has been a full partner in all of the experiences of the last 18 years. She has picked up her life and career and moved with me on my transfers. She has taken over full responsibility for our home during my temporary separations, and especially over this last full year when I was away in Korea. She's been my cheering section the many times when things were tough. She deserves a significant share of the credit for the triumphs and successes that we celebrate here today. As a small token of the appreciation I have for her love and support, I earlier presented her with a special memento that you will find on her left wrist. I assure you, it's not an Itaewon sidewalk special. You'll look at it when you can see it later. You know, Faith Hill sings a popular song called The Secret of Life, in which she says, among other things, the secret of life is to find the right woman. I consider myself very lucky to be able to say that I have found the secret for my life in Patsy. Now I would like you to indulge me for one final item. I have a short 2-minute video clip that, for me, captures all the majesty and thrill of flying the F-15. The clip depicts what is called an alert scramble in the air defense community. A horn goes off, the crews scramble to the airplane and launch in minimum time to intercept an enemy or other unknown airborne threat that has been spotted on radar. If you look closely as the aircraft begins its takeoff roll, you'll be able to see each of the 5 stages of afterburner light in those 2 Pratt & Whitney F-100s, ultimately producing 50,000 pounds of thrust. Believe me, you can't imagine the exhilaration you feel as each successive stage lights and pushes you faster and faster down the runway. As I stand here today, it's hard for me to imagine that I actually did this type of thing for 7 years at the beginning of my career. But I did, and this is how I would like to remember my career. One other note I will make about this clip is the pilot you see running up the stairs was one of my F-15 students when I was an instructor pilot at the. Can we run the tape, please? As I get ready to close here, I'd like to give one final salute to the men and women still serving on active duty. As you are all well aware, the current world situation and the force structure in our military today create a very demanding life for you and your families. I salute each of you for your continuing service to your country. Thank you, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Thank you for joining us in honoring Lieutenant Colonel and Mrs. Joyner. Following the Air Force song, please allow the official party to take their places in the receiving line and then join us for refreshments as we congratulate the Joyners. Please rise for the Air Force song.